Welcome back, Red Spotters. We are back here on Red Spotlight number 338. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez. And we've got some great stuff to discuss with you today. We have the Black Widow review, the new Marvel movie out in theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access right now, as well as a review for Fear Street, the first part, 1994, currently streaming on Netflix, as well as what we've been up to, what we've been watching, what we've been reading, ultimately what we've been purchasing, as well as some of the latest news coming out of the world of movies regarding box office, theaters, trailers, what have you, here on today's episode. As a reminder, you can listen to our podcasts anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, CastBox, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, anywhere and everywhere. Usually every single Sunday, as well as sometimes on Thursdays. Now, we have been recapping Loki with David Francisco and myself, and we're ramping toward the what I would label as season 1 finale, because season 2 is obviously happening. I mean, everybody
climax
knows
of the film.
Everybody knows. Oh, fuck off. We're not calling them movies. We have moved on. I have officially proclaimed they are television shows. They are advertised as such. They are being promoted as such. This is a television medium format. Fuck off what Letterboxd says. This is why I have said for years and years, Letterboxd is not our official sponsor, but Peter insists on doing so, and he has his own system. But we're ramping up toward the season 1 finale of Loki, and you can catch our recap of it here on Red Spotlight, as well as reviews of movies that are in theaters or on Disney Plus right now, including but not limited to Luca, In the Heights, A Quiet Place Part 2, The Conjuring, as well as Cruella over on the Fantasy Fair podcast, which will be probably Peter Martinez's worst movie of 2021, if he ever, by the way, gets around to watching the film.
That's a big if, right?
That's
there.
a big if, but if that ever happens, don't worry. Peter will be here to say what he feels, because I don't think the Fantasy Fair would allow such vulgar comments to be spewed on a family-friendly podcast such as theirs. Although they do have Kyle, who has a tendency to make anything and everything a sexual euphemism, so you know the rules kind of went out the window there.
I mean, there's a reason he's had to be put on unpaid leave. I'll just put it that way. There's a reason we're not getting 2 weeks of the Fantasy Fair right now. Well,
there are a lot of reasons for why things are happening. Who can say? So I guess the proper place to start is to kind of recap where we've been, what we've been up to, what have we been seeing, what have we been reading, what have we been buying. Peter, would you like to start off with what you've been doing?
I should, right? Okay. Have I seen anything?
If you are not ready, I can go first, if that would give you some more time.
You go first.
Okay. Isn't it wonderful of me to know immediately how unprepared Peter is? That way I can go ahead and save him before he even needs to
forget the
ask.
things that I watch unless I write them down and shit, but...
Well, obviously, the things that you watched this week we'll be discussing in greater length, which is what the show mainly is about, clearly. Mm-hmm. But we also have a bunch of other affairs that we are up to, that's for sure. For myself, well, this is where we stretch the confines of what we saw this week even means. Sometimes we turn into what we bought this week.
Oh, God.
And with me, as I'm sure the audience knows at this point, if I'm buying something, usually it means it's some kind of movie-related something, and, 9 times out of 10, usually though, 10 times out of 10, it ends up being poster-related. So there is that.
This man despises bare walls.
I still got room. People would like to, throw around the rumors out there as if there's all the 4 walls are nothing but poster. There's plenty of bare wall to spare.
He's talking about the ceiling.
The ceiling is an area, of course, of the 4 walls. To be clear about that, but there is plenty of other space. How would it be that I keep getting so many posters and yet, there is still space to be had. As I mentioned a few weeks back, I did acquire beautiful print of the teaser poster for Luca, which is a film, I have to say, and I'm happy to report, has really kind of grown considerably, not just in my own estimation of it, but also in terms of my own love and passion for it. And I want to share, a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing, a lot of the things that I've been hearing about people and how much they've responded to this film. So we have long criticized at this point, it may have been mentioned just about every single episode at this point, how most of us are very upset with the fact that Disney did not allow this film to have a theatrical play. For, a myriad of reasons, one of which include how successful all of us feel this film would have been. It is the ultimate family film. It is the ultimate summer film. I think more so than anything else coming out, including Disney's own Jungle Book, by the way. Broad audience, I feel it would have been a successful film all around the world. Granted, of course, there are areas around the planet that have yet to really come back from COVID because they have no vaccines. To be clear about that, that's why box office can be hampered depending on where you are on the planet. But with that being said, one of the positives of the film being on Disney Plus for free with your subscription, not with this Premier Access BS that all the other movies have been forced to go into, it has seemingly given the film an audience that perhaps, and a passionate audience at that, that may not have been there, really, if it weren't for its ease in accessibility. Now, this past weekend, I was visiting family and friends in the Chula Vista area. And granted, when I'm visiting these friends, it's rare that they bring up movies. And it's rare still that we get into that conversation. But I was really happy to see that on both occasions. So I do have on my phone, the wallpaper, the screensaver, if you will, is the poster of Luca. And invariably, when you're holding up your phone and you set it down, people can see what it is that you have. And on two separate occasions that weekend, Isabella and Victoria, one of which I met that weekend, another one which I've known for, I think, a year or so now, really took notice of that and immediately expressed such enthusiasm for the film. They're around my age. One's a couple years younger. One is around exactly how old I am. But they were really excited, enthusiastic about the film. And it kind of speaks to something I haven't encountered all that much, that it says a lot about this movie, as simple as it is, as dismissed as it has been among certain circles, that it's resonating this much. And then also a different tweet that Alexis Moreno, who, by the way, used to work at a Disney store, personally attested to this tweet by somebody who apparently frequents the Disney theme parks. And this is what they say. I can't believe how popular Pixar Luca is in the parks. I'm constantly hearing kids yell, "Silencio Bruno," or quote the film. Guests are wearing Luca shirts all the time. I don't think this is just because it's a Pixar film. People are genuinely connecting to it. So this really makes me happy, especially since those of us who love the film, to a certain extent, feel it was robbed, and we feel robbed, of not being able to see this film as it was intended on the big screen. Peter, what are your thoughts about this response to Luca? I'm personally just overjoyed to hear this.
Well, I mean, at least you were able to see Cruella in theaters.
I didn't.
Oh.
I did not. Fuck that.
No,
I wasn't going to pay to see that movie. I didn't pay to see that movie.
Oh.
The Disney High Priestess goes, she supplied a copy of the film.
Oh, God. Disgusting. I'm happy because I kind of liked that film.
You adored it, if memory serves correctly.
If it does.
And they have the tapes, of course. The tapes are there. No, I'm very happy. Yeah.
No, I think because it can be worrisome where it's like it went straight to Disney Plus and it's just like no one really talked about it. It was just kind of film. It came out. Like, I don't know, right? Like it doesn't have all the pomp and circumstance as a film releasing in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's why I found the decision so weird, because I'm like, this is a perfect film for kids. It's very, very family friendly, but it's very enjoyable. It's funny. Like, an adult can see it and not want to shoot themselves in the face. It's surprising that they would send it straight to Disney Plus, because it's very family friendly. You can be an adult and watch it and not want to kill yourself. It's funny. It's light, so even little kids can see it. It's colorful with bright animation, so it'll keep their attention. It's not that eventful, but it's also not slow. It's always moving. So it's like the perfect summer family film. And I really think they fucked up not putting it in theaters. But I don't know. I'm glad that people are watching it.
I am too. We'll keep bringing up Luca as much as we can because no one else seems to. But yeah, look, I think it's shaping up to be a good year for film. Animation, especially, is I think kind of the MVP so far, both on the spectrum of film and television. I don't remember the last time, we're already halfway into the year, where my favorite two movies have been animated. Speaking of which, one of the posters that I did acquire this week was really fun poster for Mitchell's versus the Machines, a film both Peter and I enjoyed very much. So we reviewed it back in April, I believe, or early May.
Yes.
And I also acquired a poster for Invincible, the animated Amazon Prime series based off the Robert Kirkman comics, of both which Peter and David have read. Peter read it in 3 days, as he said to me last night, and then David just only, I think, a week or so ago, finished reading all 15 years worth of comics for Invincible.
Took him long enough.
Well, some people love to savor the experience, I'm sure. But no, I'm very much enthused so far with what I've been seeing. And yeah, those are the posters that I've acquired. And just really love all of them combined. And then as far as to like what I have been watching so far, Peter, a few months back, I went to go visit my friends, and they're your friends as well, although you talk to them maybe once a decade. Then again, to be fair, they're hardly ever available for anybody who's not like in their orbit. They're known for being... Eric and Nettie have this reputation for being as responsive as God itself, or the benevolent being as God, or whatever. Like, they hardly ever get back. But the last time I was there, I did notice that Eric, in particular, on Hulu, was watching Dragon Ball. Now, this is, and I believe at this point it was a rewatch. He had seen it obviously before in his childhood. Now, for those who are listening, at least as far as Western audiences are concerned, every child minus Peter and Kyle.
Yes.
Every child minus Peter and Kyle. That's one of the weird things I've encountered. Was not just exposed to the Dragon Ball series, but it was very, very, very popular. A lot of people are so crazy about it. And next to Marvel, I have lost count of the number of adults that normally you would think would be the ones who would shame others for loving things like Star Wars and comic books, but very proudly, have shirts or posters or designs of sorts with the characters Goku or Vegeta on it. It is a very popular franchise of a Japanese anime that was imported over to the States and hit big in a way that you really would be hard-pressed to miss. Now, Peter, being the maverick as he loves to be, wears it as a badge of honor that he had avoided this the entire time. Although, of course, Peter often says that the anime medium itself vastly eluded him.
I avoided all of it. It was weird to me. I'm sorry.
I remember years and years ago, I think you were sampling one anime, I don't recall which one, and you couldn't get past the fact that there was a talking cat.
What's it called? The fucking Sailor Moon. Anime's just, they look weird and they talk weird and the hair is just insane and things just happen in anime that it's just like, well, why did this it just happened? And I don't know. It just throws me off. As a kid, it was too different for my senses.
Sounds like there was a bit of a bias in there, Mr. Martinez.
For sure.
Okay.
A bias against the animation. The animation style was just, I don't know. It's just wasn't appealing to me.
It didn't speak to you.
It did not speak to you.
As I've said many times, I remember in those years when I was very, very young, if anything didn't immediately look like it was made by Disney, I wouldn't pay attention to it as far as movies were concerned.
Yeah.
That's usually how I was. Now, lately, I think you've been trying a little bit more anime, right?
Yes, I have. There's a lot of good anime stuff. There is. I've watched a bit of it and I've very much enjoyed it. And I'd like to think I've changed since being a baby. I'd like to think there's been at least some growth, some change.
Right.
And I think I love animation and I very much enjoy the medium of animation styles. There is still some things where I just look at it and I'm like, I feel like I'd get a headache if I tried to watch that. But I think that lies with everything, not just anime.
Yeah.
So it's like, but no, there's a lot. I've finally started watching the Ghibli films.
Right.
They're fantastic. Yeah. And the animation, it's beautiful. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. So yeah, no, but that was my, I don't know, childhood bias against that. And yeah, no, for whatever reason, people are fucking obsessed with Dragon Ball Z. And as a kid, I was just like, okay.
Do you remember
I never gave a shit.
You never saw any of the shows? You never saw an episode of it? Do you recall?
I mean, I've seen
clips, images,
but I guarantee you the second it started, I would change the channel.
Oh my god,
it wasn't for me.
Hey,
the way they would talk, "How dare you come to my property?" And like,
it's so not your style.
Dramatic.
It's so not your style.
And it was just, I don't know. As a kid, I was just like, I don't know. I'm gonna go watch Cat Dog.
No, I should have said before. So I've rarely ever been given the chance in almost 7 years of doing this podcast to talk about Dragon Ball. If it hasn't been, and I don't think it has been said really at all before, because as it happens to be, most of the conversations throughout these 7 years, almost 7 years, have been with you and have been with Kyle. And as I've just said, you two know nothing about it. So really there's nothing to discuss whatsoever, much less even come to a analysis of it whatsoever. But it is one of my favorite things ever. I mean, I'm talking about ever. As not just as far, it is easily in my top 10 favorite television shows of all time, and will forever be that way. The impact that it had on me really can't be overstated overall. I think so much of who I am as a person, and so much of what I, the inherent values that I hold dear, compassion, and truth, and all those things, and the value of family and friends, a lot of things that I saw as a kid showed me those things. But a lot of it's also imbued with this anime that, are kind of, in some ways, beyond, inexplicable. Can't really pinpoint exactly what it is. But they mean a lot to me. And when I was, visiting my friend, I was like, man, I haven't seen this in such a long time. And I've been wanting to watch the revival series. Did a revival, because everything has a revival series, obviously. So, like...
That's another thing with animes, too.
Well, this one's different.
They all have a remake series.
This is not a reboot. This is... the Dragon Ball franchise just continues. There's gaps in between. But so, there's the original Dragon Ball anime, which started in the late 80s. Then there is Dragon Ball Z. That is the big one. That's the one that really made it big. And then immediately after there was Dragon Ball GT, which is the one that is reviled by the fandom. That's the one that people dismiss as... It's the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., basically, of the Dragon Ball universe, because it is dismissed by canon and is not personally supervised by Akira Toriyama, who basically is the Kevin Feige of that universe. So, and then afterward, there were a series of films, and then in 2013, or I think it was 2015 or 16, there was a revival series, which is basically a sequel series, which is called Dragon Ball Super. I had not seen most of Super. I had not seen most of this franchise, I would wager, since the mid-2000s, which was, I'm sorry to say, for myself and my own personal health and well-being, a very long time ago. So, I'm kind of like you in this way, where like I wanted to watch Super. I didn't really want to go back and watch from the very beginning, but I did it because, you know what, I had been, it had been over 15 years since I had seen it, so I basically went back to watch the original show, which was Dragon Ball, and then Dragon Ball Z. I think it took me about 3.5 months to finish, basically watching it almost every single day, both of those series. And I have had, honestly, just such a blast watching it. And I'm now in the beginning of the Super series, and hopefully, if things can come to fruition, I'm going to be planning a podcast with our good friend Julio.
Oh no!
Who is an enthusiast?
Not that one. He's
an enthusiast of anime in general, but he's also a very big fan of Dragon Ball. Because I've come to realize that this particular fandom has its share of discourses that I was not previously exposed to. So I look forward to discussing all of these many differences that people have with this fandom that I haven't had the chance to talk about yet. So I'm looking forward to all of that. But it's meant a lot to really reconnect with this series, I gotta say. It kind of blew me away. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been up to this week and that week. So yeah, besides the other things we'll be discussing at some point in this episode. Peter, what have you been reading or watching or buying?
That all sounds very disgusting.
I'm sure you'll listen to it though.
That's another thing with animes though. They'll be like, oh, you should check this out. And it's like, oh, okay. Fucking 700 episodes, fucking shit. Like,
this one's not nearly as long as this one's not nearly as long. I can say for this, look, let me just say in this particular franchise's defense, there are very clear endpoints if you choose to jump off of this area. Like, there are no, like, you need to watch the entire thing to get everything. No, there are endpoints. If you wanted to jump off, that's where you can jump off. You don't have to stick around for everything.
Since the day I met Julio, he has been obsessed with Naruto, right?
Now, I'm not going to speak for Naruto. I've seen very little of it, but
Okay.
that has its own crazy following behind it.
That's the thing. I don't know. There's just such a learning curve to so much of this shit. And I don't know, if you're not like born into it, as in like you grow up watching it and shit, it just feels really hard to like jump in. Like with Star Wars, at the very least, like stuff with like Star Wars and Marvel, there's big blockbuster films that are built for you to be easily accessible to anyone and everyone, right? Like and then from there you can maybe take it like, okay, I know the basics, I know these characters, I either know if I like it or if I don't like it, and like where I can take it. With like Dragon Ball Z and like, oh, it's just all I know is a bunch of buzzwords of like Vegeta.
That's a character.
I guess.
And a planet.
Okay.
There's a planet called Vegeta, and then there's a main character called Vegeta.
Yeah.
The Prince of all
like,
Saiyans.
A bunch of... Apparently, the main character is very similar to Superman. I've heard that said a lot, too.
It's very much so in that way. I will say it's like Goku is... There are many people that view Luke Skywalker or Superman as like their personal hero. Mm-hmm. Goku is right up there with that. He is an icon in that regard for many, many people.
Yeah. It's... I mean, I have to imagine eventually Hollywood is gonna go hard in on anime adaptations.
They've tried making an adaptation of animes. They've hardly ever worked. You can kind of almost, they've worked even less than the video game adaptations, which haven't worked, period, we should say.
Yeah.
But I do believe there was an attempt. No, there was a successful attempt in that it was made, but it was awful by all indications, of a live-action Dragon Ball film, I believe.
You want to know something funny?
Did you watch that movie?
I've seen that movie.
Oh, fuck you. Go fuck yourself. How? Oh my god. You know what?
Dragon Ball Evolution, I think it's called. Yeah, I've seen it.
You basically pulled a Kyle, where the only thing he had seen from the Avatar universe was the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
That's different. That's monstrous.
No, what you're doing is monsters. That is without question the single worst thing you could do to yourself. I've never even watched that movie because it looked awful in the trailers.
It's terrible. I know nothing about Dragon Ball, and I've never cared about it, but even then I'm like, damn, you did these fans dirty. Like, it was... Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know. No, but I want to see more anime stuff. I've seen the what's it called? The Castlevania anime series on Netflix, which is really popular. Good.
Yeah. What about Attack on Titan?
Really good. I've seen the first few episodes. I saw them one time on when they aired on what was it?
Well, they're on Netflix, I believe, at the moment.
Yeah, but it was on cable. Fucking Adult Swim, I guess.
Sure.
It was probably that.
It would be there. I think that's coming. Yeah. Adult Swim is the one that's... I mean, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, they're kind of the big reason for why anime hit so big in the States.
Yeah, they're the ones that really push that shit. Mm-hmm. So I've seen that. I've seen a lot of older... like 90s films, anime stuff, which I really like. Mm-hmm. Like Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that. The Ghibli stuff. It's just basic things, right? You know? You want to start basic and then push your palette more and more and more. And that's what I've been doing. But yeah, no, so far, most everything I've seen I've really liked. Yeah, so... I looked up things, and there's only one thing I feel like I've seen that I can that counts as far as like what I've seen this past week, and everything else we're gonna talk about. So, but I'll talk about what I've read first because I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of comic book reading.
Really?
You know, Yeah.
Regular Grace Randolph, then.
She's a comic book writer, okay? Let me see. Let me go through everything. I've been reading Immortal Hulk, which is, like, when I talk about what the comics can do, what the movies can't, Immortal Hulk is really representative of that. Do you know anything about Immortal Hulk?
Of course I don't. Why do you ask these questions? I asked you.
I just love that.
You just want to hear saying, of course I don't. No, I've said repeatedly, I've never picked up a comic book in my life unless it was Star Wars related. And even then, it wouldn't even be the comic book itself. It'd be a digital version of it or a YouTube reenactment of it.
Yeah, you would be... It's not because you wanted to read it, it's you needed the lore.
I wanted the story in particular.
Yeah, the story, the lore.
Yeah, because like one of the comics ended up being a story arc of the Clone Wars after it was brutally murdered by Disney back in 2013.
And then beautifully revived by Disney in 2019.
Yeah.
Okay, Immortal Hulk is weird, and it's really hard to describe it. It's technically a horror book. It has a lot of Lovecraftian horror and stuff like that. It's within the universe. It's supposed to take place after Civil War II, in which Bruce Banner was killed. But he came back to life. Why is that? Because there's so much you need to know about it. This way, I don't think Immortal Hulk is necessarily accessible, but I'm just gonna talk about it because just
all I keep thinking is the Immortal Iron Fist. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am the Immortal Iron Fist.
Fuck that show. With how weird... I just want to explain how fucking weird it's... of course, throughout comic history, there have been a lot of... The Hulk has gone through a lot of different iterations, but they also want to maintain that it's all the same continuity. So how do they reconcile with that? Bruce Banner has sort of a broken personality, right? And different Hulks throughout the years were different personalities within him, right?
Okay.
So when he was the Grey Hulk, that was one personality. There was Joe Fixit, in which he was like a mob boss in fucking Las Vegas. Like, there are different versions of the Hulk, and one of the versions is called Devil Hulk, and Devil Hulk was never released because all the other Hulks feared him. So he was kept deep inside of Bruce's subconscious. When he was killed, and Devil Hulk was kind of released. And the rules for him are a little bit different. He's immortal. And what happens is Bruce Banner can die, but kind of on werewolf rules, once the night comes down, Immortal Hulk comes out, or Devil Hulk, and he takes over. And when the sun comes back up, Bruce is back and he's alive again. And so there's really no killing him. That's why it's kind of Immortal Hulk. And it's kind of a horror book, and it's kind of Lovecraftian, and because it mixes science with magic, because gamma radiation is actually like what hell is made out of, and like there's this thing called the Green Door, which is unlocked through gamma radiation, which creates a portal to hell, and the Hulk goes to hell, and it's this whole fucking thing. Wow. It's really weird.
It sounds that way.
It's dark and it's weird, but it's also really well written. And it's very... This is a really bad word, and I shouldn't say this. Political. It's a little bit political.
You don't say.
And throughout the entire book, well, not the entire book, but like the first few volumes, you don't really know what the Devil Hulk wants, but he's kind of scary. And there's this reporter sort of following him because they're like, Bruce Banner's dead. What's going on? Da 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 da. They get through a billion circumstances. They end up in hell. And there's this, it might be Goliath. No, I don't think it's Goliath. But it's this other giant, like, smoke monster stuff guarding the exit to hell. And she's like, oh my, and there's this moment is where you finally realize what's going on. or at least what the Hulk wants. And the reporter's like, "Oh my God, like it's the end of the world." And the Hulk who's talking to her, he's like, "That thing, like no, like it's not. It's just this immortal being, whatever, it guards hell. He's not the end of the world. I am." So your hero Hulk, you realize what he's been trying to do is end the world.
Mm-hmm.
But then a few issues later, you find out what ending the world means to him. And he talks about how human beings can end all life on Earth because of nukes and how close we've come to before that. And he talks about how we're already devastated this planet through climate change, and entire portions of the food chain are dying off. And he starts talking about like, I want to end the human world because if I do, maybe some of them will end up living. Like, and it becomes this whole thing. And then he like takes on the Roxxon Corporation, which is the
it's Amazon
for the
Marvel universe,
basically
Marvel
for
Comics.
the Marvel universe. Yeah. And it's funny because another Thor comic kind of does something similar, where Thor takes on the Roxxon Corporation too because of all their polluting and stuff like that.
It's almost, Peter, as if comics can be inherently political,
right? It's so weird.
It's not just Captain America. It seems like this has been a thing that's always happened.
But it's this Hulk book that's like, but there's a lot of horror stuff into it, like body horror and like fucked up things wrapped into like this political intrigue stuff. It's crazy, and they throw a million things at the wall. And I'm reading it, and I'm reading this. I'm like, yeah, this could never happen. This will never make it to a Marvel film, but it's a hell of a read. And I really like it. So that's one thing I'm reading. Let me talk. Oh, I barely started reading this, but I just wanted to throw it out. I'm reading Fables, which if you don't know what Fables is, it's literally, and you're going to get a kick out of this, it's literally that one show that you and Kyle loved, Once Upon a Time.
Right, the ABC television network series that aired for 7 seasons. Mm-hmm.
But it's actually good.
Right. Okay.
That's the only difference. It's actually interesting and good, and the characters are actually good. I'm actually really hoping that eventually Netflix or something does like a series on it, so that I could point and go like, this is better and your show sucks.
Just for that reason.
Just for that reason alone. But it's really good. What else? Hawkeye. I read Hawkeye, which I think I'm gonna talk about when we get to the Hawkeye series, because I can tell that's really taken a lot of cues from.
This won't be the last time he's mentioned in this episode.
No, it won't. The Silver Surfer. This one I actually really like, and the reason why I want to talk about this is because there will be a Silver Surfer Disney Plus series. I can guarantee it.
Okay.
No, it hasn't been announced. I can tell you're thinking like, what?
That's why I was like, what are you talking about? You're predicting at some point Marvel will not only... Yeah. They will make a Silver Surfer Disney Plus series.
100%. Because Silver Surfer is one of the biggest Marvel characters.
Right.
He's very very closely tied to the Fantastic Four. So I guarantee you he's gonna make his debut. Maybe not in this, like, maybe in the sequel, I don't know, but he will make his debut around the same time that I believe the Fantastic Four will, which we all know is coming up any day now. And I do think he's such a big character, he might even get his own movie. But if not, I think for sure a Silver Surfer show. And the reason why I want to talk about this comic, because I have a feeling if they do a Disney Plus show, or even a movie, it would probably be this story. And the reason is, Silver Surfer is very stoic and kind of a dark character. I asked
Mads
this
Mikkelsen,
again.
Ryan Gosling. Not Ryan
Do
Gosling.
you know anything about the Silver Surfer?
Do I know? Of course I don't.
Okay.
Of course I don't. I know he's the villain for the Fantastic Four. I know that there was a movie called Fantastic Four or Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Rise of the Silver Surfer.
So yeah.
That was in the sequel. Yeah.
I know that he surfs, or he's on a surfboard.
Yes,
and that's
that is
all
why
I
he's
know.
the Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
Do you know who Galactus is?
He is that one I do. He is a fart cloud in that movie, or
Yes.
or is it in Greenland? No, that's DC.
No. That's a different fart cloud.
That's there's a lot of fart clouds in comic book movies. It seems like he is basically Darkseid, really, for the Marvel comics. Like Galactus is. Well, he's supposed to be the main villain, is he not? He's supposed to be even bigger than Thanos.
No. I'll explain.
If that's not the case, blame Kyle Lira entirely, because he is the one that has been telling me for years that Galactus is a bigger villain than Thanos.
I think he literally is bigger because he's a huge dude, so he's technically not wrong. I think it's arguable that he might, at this point, Thanos for sure is, but Galactus is less like a straightforward villain and more like a force of nature, which I think I understand why they turned him into a cloud because of that. But he's this giant, everlasting being that goes from world to world and eats it because he hungers for worlds. And he's Galactus the World Eater. And that's really all he cares about. He has no... He's not scheming or anything. He's just kind of a force of nature. And he has heralds, or kind of like his 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Only there's not really 4, it's just whoever. And one of them is the Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer was the first one, because Galactus came to his world, because Silver Surfer is an alien. Norrin Rad. He came to his world, and he was going to eat his world, but Silver Surfer said, spare my world, and I will be your herald. I will work for you. And Galactus said, I accept. And he imbued him with the power cosmic and gave him his little silver surfboard. And he became the Silver Surfer. And what he did at that point was he went out and found worlds and prepared them for Galactus to come and devour. And because of that, he is the death. He is the reason. He feels complicit in the death of millions of worlds and trillions of people. Aliens, lives. Mm-hmm. And it's not until Fantastic Four, this is why he's closely tied to the Fantastic Four, and one of the earliest issues, Galactus comes to Earth, right? But first they meet the Silver Surfer. He's kind of a villain, but through his time on Earth and interactions with the Fantastic Four, he's like, It finally gives him the spark to rebel back against Galactus, and he helps the Fantastic Four defeat Galactus and basically repel him from Earth. In which case, he stops being Galactus Herald, and he decides to become a hero. Not only of Earth, but of the whole galaxy. And because of that, he's a very brooding character. A lot of him stuff is him, floating through space, talking about how lonely and his guilt for the trillions of lives that he's taken and trying to make amends. And that's kind of his character, right? Mm-hmm. I don't feel like Marvel's going to do that. It's too... Like, when we get to Black Widow,
it's just too complicated for him.
It's too much for them.
They like to keep things simple.
They like to keep things simple. This Silver Surfer run by Dan Slott it's kind of a reinvention in which it's very, very light. It's a fun adventure through the cosmos / romantic comedy. It's because you have the Silver Surfer, and he loves adventure, he loves to see the stars, and he's going through everywhere, and through silly and weird circumstances, he meets up with this human girl who spent her whole life in in one place, and she never wanted to leave. But through weird circumstances, she's captured by aliens, and Silver Surfer finds her, and they create this bond, and it's sort of this thing where through his interactions with him, she finds her spark for adventure, and they go on countless adventures together, right? And it's this, cute sort of back and forth between this hundreds of years old cosmic being and then just a regular young woman. and it's fun, and it's cute, and it's romantic, and it's really good, and I really like it. And I feel like that's what the if they do a Silver Surfer anything, I think that's what they'll do, because I think it fits the MCU a little bit more. And then also Sandman. I want to talk about Sandman only because they're creating a Netflix adaptation, and I'm gonna watch it. And if it's good, I really hope it's good. It has to be good. I'll make you watch it as well.
Make me watch it.
Make you, yes. Bitch. You know who Neil Gaiman is, right?
No.
For reals?
Maybe if you mention it, I don't know that name offhand. Okay.
The writer Neil Gaiman, he writes a lot of stuff. I don't know what to tell you. I feel like you should know who the fuck he is. He wrote the original book of Coraline.
Oh, okay.
That's the only connection I think you would know of specifically. But he wrote what many consider to be one of the greatest comic books of all time, The Sandman, which is about Morpheus, not the one you're thinking. He is literally the Lord of Dreams. He's a member of the Endless, which includes dream, death, despair, desire, delirium, and destiny. And they are these endless beings and they literally encompass these things, and it's really weird. It's a really weird comic book that deals with what are dreams and what they are to human beings, and deals with a lot of different characters and historical figures and mythic individuals throughout all of human history. Like, the comic starts off with an occult group tried to capture death in order to try and live forever, the literal embodiment of death, which is Dream's sister, Death. But they captured him instead, and he was captured for over 80 years. And when he finally escapes, he comes back to his realm of dreaming, and it is in disarray, and it sort of takes off from there. And it's a lot of just weird stories, and it's not your typical comic book stuff. Like, at one point, Lucifer, Lord of Hell, decides to quit. And he gives Dream the keys to hell and says, "You are now in charge of hell." And now that beings across all of reality know that hell is up for grabs, they all come to the Lord of Dreaming's castle, and they all try to persuade him to give them the keys to hell. And one of them are like the gods from Asgard and Odin, and he wants the realm of hell because he fears Ragnarok. And, one day Ragnarok will come, and he says, if Ragnarok comes and everything is destroyed, they can circumvent that by having the realm of hell to them and the Asgardians. And it is really out there stuff, and it's beautifully written, and it's really, really good. So I'm just throwing it out there now for when the Netflix show is released, and we'll talk about it. You know what? Even if it's crap, we'll talk about it, because I'll talk about why it's crap. And I'll get to the one film that I did see that we haven't talked about yet, and it is called Psycho Gorman. Little girl, big psycho. Siblings Mimi and Luke unwittingly resurrect an ancient alien overlord using a magical amulet. They force the monster to obey their childish whims and accidentally attract a rogues gallery of intergalactic assassins to small town suburbia.
Where's this movie at?
Shudder.
Ah.
It is a dark comedy, and Psycho Gorman is he's basically this. Imagine if two children in suburbia were magically able to get an amulet that controls Thanos, and then got him to do whatever they wanted at their whim. It's like E.T., but if the alien was Thanos instead, and it was rated R. It's a small indie movie, and it's a dark comedy, and I thought
there are a couple things I think I would command him to do.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
and part of the joke is the little girl that like has control. She's kind of crazy. You know what? You know what it really reminds me of? It's like Billy and Mandy. It's a little bit like live action Billy and Mandy.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, and it's funny. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, that's everything that I've been doing.
Well, that was a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's because you don't have any frame of reference, so I have to lay down the groundwork.
Well, that was very thorough. That was very, very thorough. Before we get to the actual reviews today, I wanted to just quickly discuss where we feel the movies are at right now. It's been about over a month since Peter and I have made a return to the movies, and theaters, for the most part, are now back up and running. At least 70% of theaters are open all over the country. And as more and more blockbusters continue to come out, we have seen some pandemic-era records be broken. Recently, we had Furious 9, or F9, whatever you want to call it. It was the first to break the record with a $70 million opening weekend. In the pandemic era, of course. And that was recently topped by Black Widow, which did $80 million at the box office. And Disney, for the first time ever, reported how much money the film grossed through the Premier Access Avenue, in which case Black Widow grossed $60 million on Disney Plus alone for this opening weekend. Disregarding the Disney Plus element for the moment, where do you think this leaves us? Do you feel that we are moving in a positive direction when it comes to the movies slowly but surely coming back, as, a regular occurrence? I feel like we've been building a little bit upward, as, we go further and further as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, of course, because of how much it has hampered this business. We're at a point where every public official is saying, and it is truthful based on all data, that 99% of people who are sick and getting infected and dying are people who refuse to get vaccinated. Which, and by the way, while a rare occurrence, it is very much possible for people who are vaccinated fully to get COVID-19, in case that wasn't clear. But the chances of that are very, very low. They really are. The vaccines, I feel, are working. They just are. And the ones who don't have the vaccines, they're just paying the consequence for not getting the vaccine. And it is entirely of their own decision to do so. That being said, do you feel we're moving in a positive direction when it comes to movies coming back?
I mean, clearly. Look at that box office.
Yeah. We're moving upward.
Pretty near pre-pandemic levels. I mean, especially because in the coming weeks, there's definitely going to be films that people are going to want to see. And going to want to see in the theaters.
We got Space Jam, Snake Eyes, Jungle Cruise, Shang-Chi.
Suicide Squad.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm pretty confident in saying movies are mostly back. There might be small changes that we can't fully see now, where it's like, this permanently changed, even though movies are back, this small aspect to movie going has been forever altered. But that would take a while to really fully see whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
But, compared to when at the height of all this, and people are like, what if movies are dead forever, like movie theaters? And it's like, clearly not.
No.
Clearly people enjoy the
theatrical experience.
The experience of a movie theater more so than just seeing the film.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's
if they
not
just wanted to see the movie, for Black Widow instance, they could have very easily.
It's very clear that people want that experience. Which awesome. I do too.
Yeah.
So no, this is clearly all moving in a positive trend for movie theaters.
And I feel it'll take a little bit longer though for the global box office to come back, because as has been mentioned, several continents of the world have not been fully supplied with the vaccine just yet. And so there is going to be a lag. And then I believe in Europe, they're having issues with, I believe, the Delta variant, which is also in the States, from what I understand. So it's a combination of not enough resources and then also people choosing not to get vaccinated. That invariantly is going to prolong, needlessly, as expected, the pandemic that we're currently in. But, yeah.
Yeah.
We could have told you that a year ago.
These people, and there's a concerted effort to politicize. This is what's crazy to me. This is why I call conservatism in the United States like a death cult, and not just, because it's one thing when it's just like, well, they go wherever the money tells them to go, right? So if they're paid off to believe bad shit, then they'll believe it. Who cares? But with there's no money behind, stopping people from getting vaccines or anything in that nature. It's literally just a rallying call, right? It's just this weird death wish, and all of conservative media has tripled down on saying vaccines bad.
Simultaneously, while all of the pundits and hosts on conservative media are vaccinated, so including the former president Donald Trump and his wife and his family.
Yeah. Which is funny because he'll also try and take credit for the vaccines. I don't know. But yeah, you can't do anything about that.
No, you can't. So that is where we are when it comes to that. So without any further ado, shall we get on to Black Widow? I'm going to ask Peter to get on Letterboxd to get the synopsis summary and about the movie. It's hilarious, though, some of the headlines I've been reading off Black Widow lately. Yeah. Get ready, people. We got a lot of thoughts here. I want to start things off by just saying real quick before you get that summary. Peter and I feel, are going to ultimately arrive at the same place when it comes to what this movie is, how it landed with us, how ultimately the character of Natasha Romanoff was treated in the MCU. But there will be some pretty clear differences in terms of where we feel on the particulars as the road from Iron Man to the Black Widow. So just be warned. this has been a sore spot in the past between the two of us, and particularly
Yes.
the events regarding Avengers Endgame. That is going to come up invariantly because we're discussing the character. And so when that happens, expect some
Fireworks?
explosives. Yes, go ahead. Yeah,
I just
that's
want everyone to
basically
know
where we are.
my criticisms come from a love of character.
Yeah. We both enjoy Scarlett
Alexis does it because he hates
Johansson's.
women.
We both enjoy Scarlett Johansson's performance. We both enjoy her in these movies. But that being said, you can simultaneously enjoy her presence, her character, and then also be very critical of how she was handled in all of the films. At the same time, we will say some very not kind things about this film, as we do with many movies. But as should be reminded and stated, if you enjoyed this film, if you liked this movie a lot, and if it deeply resonated with you, do not let any of what we say hamper that or diminish that. I, for one, wish I was there with you in saying that I love the film. I did not love the movie. Neither did Peter, based on our previous conversations on the film. But love what you love, and don't let anybody else tell you differently. But we will give you our reasonings for why we arrive at the place that we do with this movie. And I feel like our reasonings are different, although we will arrive at the same place ultimately. So, Peter, without further ado, go ahead.
All right. Black Widow, directed by Kate Shortland. She's done running from her past. Natasha Romanoff, also known as Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationship she left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. Starring Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, Olga Kurylenko, and Ray Winstone. Directed by Kevin Feige. Yeah, Black Widow. That's the little intro for Black Widow. You know what I saw? And this has literally, I guess it has something to do with what we're talking about, but not much. Oh, spoilers. The actress that plays what's it called? Taskmaster. I was like, I've seen that actress before. And I was like, oh yeah, she was the Bond girl in Quantum of Solace, right?
Yeah.
And I, for whatever reason, I was looking at her bio and I was like, I looked at the year she was born and I was like, like that. Wait, that's weird. And then I looked at Scarlett Johansson's, and she's like a decade older than Scarlett Johansson.
Whoa!
But it's funny because in the movie, she's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like
Younger.
the opposite. Like she's supposed to be like
Far younger.
like 15. Not 15,
Yeah.
maybe 12. I don't know. She's supposed to be like at least a decade younger than Scarlett Johansson. In the movie. I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Is that the makeup then?
No, just age is good. I don't know what to tell you. It's that,
Well, because her
that
appearance in the
Hollywood-
movie, she's injured.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe they made her look older through the makeup process.
What do you mean older?
Never mind. Let's get to it.
She is older in real life, so they would make her look younger through the makeup process.
Oh, well then. Yeah.
See, you weren't listening. Anyway, Black Widow. I really, honestly, really liked this film for 20 minutes. That first 20 minutes, I was like, oh shit, this is neat. I like when it starts off and it's, the fake American family bullshit going full Putin. Have you've seen that famous photo of Putin shaking hands with Bill Clinton
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. But everything, like establishing her and her family in America, and them escaping to Cuba, and then like sort of their intro into the title sequence of Black Widow, and tackling child trafficking, and really rather intense and kind of fucked up, especially because like these parents that they put so much trust in, they kind of don't give a fuck. Like it was literally just a mission. It's all of that I found really interesting, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll like this a little bit more than I initially thought I would. And then the rest of the movie happens, and it's like, okay, it's a Marvel movie. This is what I expected. This is the movie I expected to see. And I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't enjoy myself. I very much did. But I also don't think I ever would claim to say that it was a bad movie in any way in particular. It's just standard. And like I said before, the Disney Plus shows really enamored me, and I really enjoyed those. The way I was feeling before those Disney Plus shows, where it's just like I'm kind of over this just standard MCU film stuff. Like maybe I'm just gonna walk away. But then the Disney Plus shows came out. I'm like, oh, this is different. I'm enjoying it. They're going for some things here that I never thought they would. And even though those all had their flaws, I'm like, yeah, like, no, this is making me give a fuck again. Like, yeah, I'm into this. And then to watch Black Widow, it's like even though it's not bad, it's like taking 5 steps back. And it's like we're right back to the same song and dance as far as Marvel films go. So yeah, I left the theater certainly not negative, but I guess lukewarm. It was a Marvel movie. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a lot of things. In my mind, I'm currently deciding in what order to actually break down, all of those things. Let's see if I can start off by responding to some of the things that you said. I feel both of us at this moment would be far angrier in terms of not only the movie, but the future of Marvel movies if we didn't have the benefit of having seen most of the Disney Plus series for Marvel Studios that they've produced. Because they have restored some faith in the future of their projects because of the quality produced in this TV series. And if we didn't have that in our minds, and we saw this movie, which I believe at some point was going to be the case. At some point, we were supposed to get Black Widow before we got any of those shows.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that I would have been very, very depressed about the future of any of their projects based on how this is. We've said repeatedly now for the last couple of films, not all of them, but most of them have been standard to subpar, and we feel like when you're this far into making movies, that doesn't cut it anymore. We've been saying that repeatedly, which is why what ultimately led us to being so pessimistic in the first place about the future of Marvel films. Post Far From Home, post Endgame. I did enjoy myself. Unfortunately, not nearly as much as I would love to have been. I feel the film suffers greatly from a lot of external realities about the process of making the movie, and I feel it also suffers greatly from a flawed design in terms of what it set out to do. And I feel that based on how they've telegraphed what they set out to do in the film, and what the film ultimately was, if that first part was true, then I feel that probably was a misfire altogether. This is not nearly the movie I wanted it to be. I really wanted to love this movie. I really wanted to have a great film for Scarlett Johansson, who has waited such a long time to have her movie, especially for this iteration of Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff, who oftentimes has been neglected by the MCU. And, of course, understanding the external circumstances that delayed the film from being made in the first place. That notwithstanding, the story they came up with, and in terms of execution, I was just left so many times wondering, is this really it? Is this it? And I agree with you, after those initial 20 or so minutes, I kind of just felt the air let out of the bag or something, or the air let out of the room. The film, I feel, disappoints in a number of areas. Everything from visual effects to the action choreography to its story is just lackluster and flawed all around. I'll speak for myself in this case. When I think of the reasons for why I like this character ultimately, I'm not going to think about this movie. I'm not going to think about this movie, period. This wasn't a bad film. Just put that out there. It was a generic Marvel movie. But not only as a matter of principle, our generic Marvel movie is no longer good enough, it wasn't nearly good enough for what this was supposed to be. The film was always going to be a case of too little, too late. For those not aware, the film was delayed for many years because Kevin Feige for a long time had a report to Ike Perlmutter, who was the former head of Marvel. And just to be clear about this, about the number of, honestly, disturbances that this man created for Marvel Studios, here's a quick recap. Because people do not know this. Contrary, let me see here. Yeah, I'm going to read this tweet thread. Perlmutter was cheap and didn't want to spend money. Marvel Studios didn't want to have the Disney bag. Okay, you know what? I'm not reading this. I'm not going to read this. Forget it. It's too much reading. The point is, there was this bastard called Ike Perlmutter, and he kept a lot of projects from being made. And this movie, Black Widow, was one of them. Why? Because he didn't believe that Black Widow was a popular character and it wouldn't make money. That's what it was. And so, we get a film that really was optimal for 2016, and now we have it in 2021, and it feels even less impactful than it would have been. If I sound disappointed, I very much am. When I think about Natasha Romanoff as a character and why I like her, I think about the other appearances that she's in. She was, in my view, this is my view, she was far more compelling as a supporting player than she was in this movie. At many times, I thought this film treated her like an afterthought. And it feels like a slap in the face. And honestly, it just leaves a very, very bad taste in my mouth in terms of what could have been. There were so many moments in which I thought to myself, I see greatness. I see the potential for what this could be. And instead, we get a Marvel movie. This is exactly what I was expecting, and yet I'm still disappointed overall. And if I seem a bit angry, I kind of am. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think there are worse films, particularly in the MCU. But as far as for what the potential that this had, and as far as for what this was promised to be, there's no excuse at this point. I'm fed up, honestly.
I think on the whole, the MCU has kind of done the character of Natasha a bit dirty.
I agree. Especially with this. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
How is it that you finally promise the potential of her leading her film and this being her movie, and yet you still don't make it about her? How do you do that? How do you go around and promise to everybody this is supposed to be finally her story, and yet you make it about her passing the baton to her replacement after killing the character off in the continuity of the films? How do you do this?
That's the thing, though, right? Like, this film genuinely feels like it exists solely so we can get our Black Widow replacement in Florence Pugh's character. Like, this is why it feels like it exists. Like, this is the only reason it feels like they get. And because I guess they feel almost obligated to have made this film. And it is insanely bullshit that they never did. So they're like, I guess we gotta go back. Because even they admit they have no story for her at this point. I mean, she's dead. You killed her. She's gone. Right? That they literally have to go back in time. And they're like, okay, what's the movie we would have made in 2018 or some shit like that, you know? If anything, this should have been made. This honestly feels like something that should have been, like a story that should have been told after the first Avengers. Like, that feels like this is the point that this story should have been told. And what also sucks, right, is there is interesting characters within her world that they do introduce this time. But I'm like, these characters would have... I rather would have seen these characters exist for at least most of the MCU than exists now, right? Because we're never gonna get Red Guardian fighting Captain America, or at least the original Captain America.
We were never gonna get that,
which could have been really fun, right? Like, you know, that would have been a really fun moment in one of these movies. Hell, he could have came in Civil War somewhere, right? He's like, I finally get my chance. And he's like, you know, we meet again at last. And and then Captain America's like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
That would have been so great. That would have been so fun. And then also...
That's funny.
Yeah, that would have been like... Oh, God. It would have been perfect. But... And this idea of the Black Widows running around everywhere, just sort of this kind of world that they created, this espionage world within Black Widow, I think could have played really well had those tools been available earlier into everything they were doing. It could have been really fun, and then also would have served to make Natasha feel less like just a side character, right? And I know we feel differently about Endgame, but that itself rubbed me really the fucking wrong way. And then this film comes out and it's like, yeah, it kind of exists because one, we kind of had to do it, and two, we want to set up our Black Widow replacement because we already got our Cap replacements. We're gonna get our Iron Man replacement. We need our Natasha replacement, so here's her sister you never heard of. Although this is a complete nitpick though, but like when they said like, you know, oh, it was family, it was real to me, I thought they were raised from like birth in that fake family. But it turns out it was only 3 years.
I guess so.
Which is kind of nothing to act like it was a family. I don't know. It's weird little nitpick. But yeah, I don't like how done dirty Natasha was. Especially because, and again, it's kind of a plus for the movie, but then also a negative because it reinforces the way Natasha's kind of overlooked even in her own film, is that Florence Pugh is great. Like, her character is awesome. I do really like her. She's really fucking cool. Red Guardian they introduced. He's funny. He's cool. I like him. Even their mom, like, it's interesting because she's seemingly the most emotionally understanding about what they're going through, but she's also the most brainwashed into following orders, so to speak. And I wish they would have done more with that instead of her just be like, okay, I'm switching over at the end. But that's another complaint. But yeah, like, a lot of the stuff they introduce is cool. I like the idea of Taskmaster. I know, I guess people have wanted to turn the issue with Taskmaster into another Mandarin. I like I like what they did. I just wish they could have. I guess to me is this Taskmaster isn't interesting, but the potential for the Taskmaster that we see in future projects could be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If you get what I mean. Especially because the actress is cool. You can keep the actress. You've set her up, and then now you have the ability to actually give her a personality, right? She's no longer your Terminator. You can actually do something with her. So yeah, there's good stuff. Like, the story's not bad, but it's just kind of whatever. The action is not bad. It's good in a lot of parts, but it's standard okay action. There wasn't a single action or fight scene in this film where it's like, that's burned into my memory, right? Like, I feel like action is really good when it's like, oh shit, like, this sequence is burned into my memory. This fight is burned into my memory. There's nothing with that here.
There's absolutely nothing that comes close to that. Yeah. And that's also part of my disappointment. We'll get back on the whole, like, narrative thing with Natasha in a bit, but as far as, like, all the other things you just mentioned, in particular, I was just like, if that wasn't enough to, like, really, like, disappoint me, what is Natasha also known for? Well, she's a skilled fighter, one of the best fighters we've seen, and we've seen her in some great action choreography in some of the other movies. That wasn't here. That just wasn't here. All of the action, I just felt like it was lazy. Not in the least remarkable. And extremely and aggressively forgettable. People were calling the action here like Winter Soldier light. Please, this has to be some of the laziest action I've seen out of a Marvel movie maybe ever. And then as far as the visual effects are concerned, again, this just another added layer of, like, doing another disservice to her. Like, her action set pieces are in a way of, like, what her abilities are defined by, and yet even then they drop the ball. I've never seen the visual effects look as obviously fake and cartoonish as they did. And there's no excuse, because they've had a whole year. This film was locked. It was in the can to even work on those if they wanted to. And it just looked bad. I don't know if they were trying to, like, emulate Bond and be a little over the top and cartoonish at some points with the villain and with the action set pieces are concerned. But it just didn't work. This is an example of a movie I've had in my head about what it would look like for years now. And again, I want to stress, while the finished product has some good stuff in it and ultimately isn't a bad movie, it's hard to imagine me being far more disappointed than I am right now.
I will say, because Black Panther exists, I don't think I'm as harsh as far as visual effects go.
Oh yeah. There was
yeah, that one was just bad. That was like early 2000s type shit that was in there. With this one, I guess what's really bothersome to me, right, is when you look at specifically Clint and Natasha. When you look at the rest of the team, you know why they are on the Avengers. You got Cap, you got Thor, you got Hulk, you got Iron Man, right?
You have their powers.
Like the big four right here,
Right.
you're like, you know why they are in the Avengers. And the other two, it's like, it's a couple of spies, one solely shoots arrows, and the other one is just, she has her pistols, and I guess she has like batons, which makes her a cop. Like, I don't, like, what is so special about them, right? And there are special things about them, but you really, really, really have to sell it for me to go, okay, I understand why they are quote unquote Avengers. And to me, one of the biggest things that has always been severely, severely underutilized about Natasha is that she's a spy. Do spy shit with her. She doesn't do spy shit in this movie. Like, she's on the run, but a lot of people can be on the run and not be spy. Like, the only time I really saw her skills utilized in that way, and get ready to get canceled, is in Joss Whedon's The Avengers. When she's able to extract information from Loki, right? And it's like, that's a unique skill set that no one else on the Avengers has. And it makes me go, okay, that's why she's on the team. That's sort of the unique skill set that she brings. And I feel they never emphasize that enough, right? They never really push that enough. Yes, she's a skilled fighter. All the other big four are skilled fighters too, except they're a billion times stronger than her, right? So, like, why is this skilled fighter a part of the Avengers? What unique talent does she bring to it? And I think her spy skills are that unique talent. And I had really hoped that her solo film would have leaned into them a lot more and make you go like, wow, like, oh, she's doing this, she's manipulating them, she was able to sneak in, just like James Bond movie shit, right? You know,
Yeah.
Or like Mission Impossible, you know, they some fancy party in some other side of the world, you know, they come in, use the face mask, you know, they sneak into the general's room and they're like, and then they sneak out, maybe fight a few guards, and just spy stuff. And they didn't lean into that, which again really surprised me. The only thing they took as far as spy stuff was the third act, which they kind of stole from like the worst of the James Bond series. Which I thought was interesting. That's an interesting choice. Or what many consider to be the worst of James Bond. I think it's the best because at least it's entertaining. So yeah, that's sort of where I come from as far as like action-y stuff, right?
Yeah. But it also just didn't look all that interesting. It really didn't.
Yeah.
There was nothing remarkable about it. And it just feels to me like everybody involved in this film had no business being involved in the movie. Based on where it is and where this character was. I like David Harbour. I think he's hilarious. The same can be said for Florence Pugh. If there is anybody that would replace her, it's definitely her, and she is. It's also another issue. It's like they give her the arc in this movie, not Natasha. Natasha is basically just a straight person here.
Yeah.
Again, that's a choice, baffling as it is. Rachel Weisz is fun as well. I enjoyed Ray Winstone. I enjoy him in anything he's in, from what I remember.
He's a good actor, so it's like
he's
when
a
he
good
shows
actor.
up.
Right. He's just like, I like his presence. I guess they were going for an over-the-top Bond villain in that regard.
Clearly.
And I think for that part it worked. As far as Taskmaster is concerned, it's an example where, again, the potential just wasn't really realized in the film, in which it's the main villain here, basically. And then also, as far as the twist is concerned, I thought it was a good twist. I thought it worked in scene in the film. As far as like people being upset about it, I don't care. I'm done giving credence to people who are upset because it wasn't exactly how it was in the comic book, or this here or that there.
For me, the issue with Taskmaster isn't that Taskmaster now has a vagina, or that...
That's pretty blunt, but that's true, though. I feel like there are people who have that issue. Let's be real.
But my issue isn't that, or any sort of changes in that way. My issue is that Taskmaster just has no personality. It's just...
Does he have a personality in the comics?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, well, then, in that I can understand. Okay.
The way to describe Taskmaster is he's somewhat similar to Deadpool, not like wacky, goofy, but just sort of an overconfident shit talker.
Right.
Because his ability is that and they do kind of touch on it, but again, it's a really fun ability.
They show you that. I know that he can. The character knows all the fighting moves of the Avengers.
Can instantly mimic any fighter in the world's
but
fighting moves.
You don't. That's not here.
Yeah,
that's just not here, which only adds to the complete lacklusterness of the film's action.
Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, in my mind, I'm like, you can do a lot of really cool action stuff with that, right? But they don't really. But because of that, he's sort of in the comics. He's like a cocky, assassin for hire type guy, and he's interesting in his own right. He's not like the greatest character in the world, but he is a character with personality and a very interesting skill set. That's why I'm saying, like, I think in the future, if they choose to continue with Taskmaster, which they absolutely should, like I said, throw her on the Thunderbolts. Like, I think it's so easy. Like, boom. Now that the whatever her name is no longer mind controlled, she can have a personality. You know, maybe have her be cocky and assured of herself and do fun stuff with her. So I think in the future they could fix it and make something there that isn't. There's ample opportunity for that. But here it's just kind of like, and I guess maybe to be fair, maybe they're trying to go for like a James Bond thing where it's like you have the main villain and then the henchman, you know, and Taskmaster's like the henchman and stuff. But I think both the villain and the henchman are supposed to be very expressive and interesting, right? And have just a lot of flair to them. And neither of them did here. So it just didn't work.
No, it didn't. It's just one of the things that keeps bugging me also. It's like, I don't understand, like, why, you know, this year we've gotten to see some characters finally have big, you know, introspective emotional moments. Loki, Wanda, Sam, Bucky, Vision. You know, you got to see them all have like these moments of growth and then being emotional and having the actors finally flex their muscles and show other sides of these characters that they haven't been able to do before. And I just don't understand why that couldn't have happened for Natasha. It's just sad how, you know, this is supposed to be like her most, I guess, personal story yet. And yet, she was far more broken up about losing an Infinity War than she was about anything here. Because when you see her in Endgame, she's like breaking down and crying and like really motivated. She was so motivated that she fucking killed herself to get people back. And yet here, she doesn't really care for the most part, except for Yelena. And until the end.
That's the thing, right? Because like Yelena, she's the one where it's like it was real to me, and like She kind of has, yeah. And here, they try to do some stuff. Like, they try to go like, oh, her guilt. Like, they have two moments where it's like, oh, you blew up a little girl. And she's like, well, I had to do it. And they try to act as if like this guilt weighs on her, but it's not really.
It never
like, they
has.
don't really. It's not anything. It's I don't know. It's whatever. It's dumb.
It's not anything.
It's really nothing. No time at all is really given to develop it in any interesting way. So it's there's just lip service to it, but that's about it. And then I guess like the whole family stuff, right? I guess
I will say here's a positive thing I will say about that. Mm-hmm. What I do appreciate is that they actually allowed time for that to just sit and have its thing, especially in the middle of the movie where they're all gathered for the first time and they're actually allowed to talk, and there are moments where they all go off on their own. Usually that stuff doesn't happen in the films because we got to get moving to the next thing. But still, it just wasn't enough.
That stuff was fun too, and what I do like is how both parents are really fucked up, because you have David Harbour, where he's kind of just like, this was an assignment and a boring one at that, and he does kind of care for them, but also like he's clearly not the dad type in the least. And then you have their mom, Melina, where you could tell she did care for them, but seems a little bit even more cold and calculated as far as following orders. And she's just kind of like, we did what we had to, that we accomplished our mission. Like, what are you talking about? It was a success. And I wish, and again, brainwashing in that way.
Oh God, don't get started on that one. It was so annoying.
In real life though, right? Like when people are sort of brainwashed in that way, it's not just a flip and you're done kind of thing. Like it's to me, for storytelling, it's so compelling, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's a million different directions you can go with that. And here, it's just non-existent, right? Because I thought, and again, here, like I always say, I don't like to just criticize. I offer alternatives. What you could have done is have, like, Yelena, instead of just like, oh, well, they put a magic following them spell on them, but then the spell broke, and now I'm perfectly fine, and I'm against everything, which, again, makes no fucking sense. If you're brainwashed since you were 3 years old to believe everything, this is literally everything you've ever known, you're one person coming along and go like, and telling you go be free now is not going to get you to all of a sudden go like, oh, okay, bye. Oh yeah, this thing's bad. I guess what I'm doing is bad. Yelena probably wouldn't even think she wouldn't view what she was doing as bad because she'd be so fucking brainwashed by it. I think it would have been more interesting to have Black Widow have to deal with that. Maybe Yelena is more of her adversary than nameless, boring-ass Taskmaster in this film. Just play with those themes and ideas of the psychological torture that these poor girls go through, than just say like, oh, it's the bad magic spell has been done away and now everyone is free. Yay! Go live happy lives. Like, I don't know. It doesn't track with what the story was trying to be in the beginning.
No, obviously it doesn't. And it just feels like another cop-out in that regard. Yeah, what I really loved about Natasha overall, and I guess that this speaks more to, her journey in the MCU. Because I didn't like her at all in the first movie in Iron Man 2. She wasn't a character. She was just, as Scarlett Johansson eloquently put, a piece of ass. In Iron Man 2, especially. Those are her words. And that's all she was there for, let's be real.
Yeah.
Which apparently I did. One of the things I found out, Jon Favreau quit writing the script for Iron Man 2. He did direct it, but he quit writing the script because Ike Perlmutter blocked his first couple of attempts.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah.
I bet you he probably tried to give Black Widow, like, just more than just being a piece of ass. And Ike Perlmutter's like, listen, if I gotta include broads in these fucking films, then they're there for TNA, and that's all. That's probably what happened.
So apparently, Favreau didn't write Iron Man 2. He wanted to do the Demon in a Bottle arc, whatever that is. Ike turned it down. Mm-hmm. So Jon Favreau let somebody else write the movie.
The Demon in the Bottle arc is basically Tony's alcoholism arc. It's really interesting. Yeah, that would have been good.
Ike Perlmutter, man. Yeah, he apparently, because I'm looking at this tweet thread that I gave up on reading before, but he was the reason to save money. Instead of giving characters films, actors were given contracts when they can only be in team-up movies, which explains why, Black Widow has been in a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Black Panther was supposed to be one of the characters brought in, him and Captain Marvel. Guess who blocked it? That's right. Ike thought that women-led and POC-led films wouldn't do numbers, and he was wrong. Just look at both of those films grossed $1 billion.
Yeah. Remember
when Edgar Wright was going to do Ant-Man and Patty Jenkins was going to do Thor: The Dark World?
That's right.
What happened? Yeah, that's right. It was Ike all along. There were creative differences that led to them both leaving and not turning back, and both went on to great success.
God damn it.
Little known fact, Ike didn't want Iron Man in Civil War. He fought against it so badly, he didn't want to pay RDJ his fee. Iron Man 3, Rebecca Hall was supposed to be the main villain, originally. Guess who stepped in and said, nah, no female villains. And remember, even further, because he felt that female villains didn't sell toys. And I think at some point it's also been revealed that he didn't want to give Black Widow more time in the movies because I think he deliberately made the decision to make less Black Widow toys. Just generally. Because of it. That's just the tip of the iceberg with him. By the way, we should also, give Perlmutter credit as well for destroying Marvel Television. And the reason why there was a separation in the first place, because originally, remember, Marvel Television was supposed to be this extended bridge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or at least for the first 2 years or so. But since Feige and Perlmutter split, that whole corner of the quote-unquote MCU never gets an acknowledgement of existence, in part because it was run by Ike Perlmutter. And then when Ike Perlmutter was left to his own devices, he hired people like Scott Buck, which destroyed Iron Fist, which destroyed the entirety of the Netflix universe for those heroes, and then also Inhumans, which may have irreparably harmed the reputation of the Inhumans as characters, period. The level of and of course, we should also credit the fact that Black Widow was never made until this point. The level of devastation left in Ike Perlmutter's wake cannot be overstated. How much of a crippling force he has been.
Yeah. And he still runs Marvel.
He's still technically the head of Marvel. Kevin Feige no longer takes orders from him. Perlmutter no longer has any creative involvement as far as shows or movies are concerned. But he's still the president of Marvel. He still controls the comics. He still controls the toys.
Which is insane to me because, You can get rid of him, but they've chosen not to.
Yeah. So there are many, many reasons to hate Ike Perlmutter. But back to what I was saying. What I've always appreciated about Natasha's presence in the MCU is, in lieu of, I guess if I'm going to look back and if any decision was made to what to do with her character in these movies, in lieu of them using her spy abilities to show her worth, it seems, and I appreciated when this was used, they landed on, turning her, and I believe this also has been criticized for its own, for various reasons. They landed on the idea to kind of make her like the mom of the group. Now, some people could say that's a bit sexist because she was the only girl in the group. That in and of itself has been another element that has been criticized in its own right. But also, in the absence of Tony and others, when they stepped away, she kind of became co-lead of the Avengers next to Captain America. Their friendship especially has been a highlight for me personally in these Marvel films. I think for me, still the best movie she's been in has been Winter Soldier. As far as like when they actually give her the slightest of things to have an introspective look about. Yeah. And when I saw Winter Soldier, that was the first time where I felt I would really like to see a Black Widow movie. This is not what I had in mind, clearly, as I've said. As limited as it was, I did appreciate the role that she had in Civil War, where her perspective was to keep things together. I don't want to relitigate the whole movie because that's going to be a Pandora's box, so we'll just leave it there. And then as far as Endgame is concerned, some things have aged better than others in that film. The one thing I will say that kind of aged poorly is that A24 moment. Because I know in theory it was supposed to be like, some people were saying, oh, it was for her. Okay, but it's only there for, like, I guess, a fan service moment. When you have, the A24 moment, or A24 or A-Force, never mind. Well, the girls.
You said girls A24?
Did I say?
I was like, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry. I meant, is it A-Force? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the A-Force. When all the women, they're like, girls, we get the job done. Yeah, that has aged poorly, and every time I see it, it makes me laugh now. It's silly. And it's funny. It's also funny because it just comes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, literally out of nowhere. And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
but it's like
nothing.
The main female Avenger of everything.
Yeah, and she's not there.
And she's not a part of it. She's dead.
Yeah, that also just feels like another thing. The thing where I have mixed feelings is you don't have mixed feelings on the arc when it came to Endgame. You feel very negative in that regard, and I've heard you and Kyle's reasoning for it. Some of the things, I guess, it's just a matter of whether you liked it or not. In terms of like, especially where I hear Kyle's concerns are morally, he seems really hung up on the fact that Gamora and Natasha's deaths were very similar. I can understand that.
It makes it really lame.
Okay. I felt completely the opposite about that. I didn't feel it as if like, oh, Natasha should have had her own environment or planet or whatever to have been killed in, or they shouldn't have been similar.
Let's kill both our only female leads in both our Marvel teams in the exact same stupid ass way.
That's another one of those elements that hasn't aged well. But as far as the story is concerned, and in both of those moments, like Natasha in that film is one of the reasons why I love the movie, and particularly her role. The sacrifice that she makes, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's supposed to be this heroic thing, but it's not played that way. It's very much tragic. It's tragic. And then people come back, and of course, and this is one of the things where I will absolutely criticize the Russos and Marcus and McFeely. Yes, I can do that for, contrary to popular belief. And when in their commentary they say, well, we really, and I struggle with this as well because I ultimately land on their side when it came to giving Natasha this role, but it left them really like handcuffed to what to do about the lack of resolution to her because she's just gone. And the movie happens, and the person that gets the acknowledgement of the sacrifice is Tony. And in the years following, and part of their reasoning in that commentary was like, well, we knew that Natasha is going to have another movie and maybe they'll settle things out there as far as like a final hurrah. And Tony is not going to have that. And maybe at one point I was willing to entertain that excuse, but especially after having seen this be the end outcome, that's not something I can excuse any longer. I understand that inherently because of their choice, their creative choice to kill her, they were going to land in the spot where there wasn't going to be really any kind of resolution to her absence, and it was going to leave people feeling cold. What I thought was hilarious was in the post-credit scene of this movie, Black Widow, you see Natasha's grave and you finally see somebody give a shit about the fact that she died, which is always something that's honestly felt like we've had several different projects in the MCU. As Far From Home basically was this whole thing about like people, the whole world was like mourning.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. And meanwhile, I'm here thinking Tony would not have had the opportunity to have his big sacrifice if it weren't for Natasha sacrificing herself and getting the Soul Stone. It's so frustrating, especially for me, because you at least hate the whole thing and you can land on that. But for me, I'm just so conflicted because I'm on record as saying I like that end and her, having that big moment and that big sacrifice. And while you and Kyle feel nothing and feel really cold in that death scene, I did feel emotional and I still get chills every time I see that scene or see images of that scene. But here I'm left with feeling like, but this and this here and that there. And I'm like, what the fuck? Ultimately is where I'm at. It's like everybody talks about, oh, Steve or Tony. And I'm like, but Natasha,
no one gave a shit.
No one gave a shit. And she put all the pieces in place. She gave everything. And then this is what she sacrificed herself for everybody to forget.
And this is what sucks about that. Okay. To me, and this is why, okay, I'm gonna go off. Okay,
please. I've been going off. How long have we been talking, by the way? I'm really curious to see how long this podcast has lasted. We're at 2 hours. Okay, so we're good.
I liked her. For the first time, I really, really liked her in Avengers. I'm like, this is an interesting character.
Yes.
I can't wait to know more about her.
She was awful in Iron Man 2. I mean, honestly. The performance, what the material she was used for, she was awful. Avengers, that's where everybody was like, this is a character you got here.
This is neat. This is something here. And
I'm sorry if people feel offended that we're praising Joss Whedon for delivering that. But hey, he did it. And it was
sorry.
Good. I'm sorry, not sorry.
Guess what? Every other director out there before the year, like, I don't know, 2000 is probably a massive asshole. I don't know what to tell you. Most of them, I guess. And then you get to like, what's it called? Winter Soldier, and it continues that. Like, oh, okay, I like this. I assume eventually we're going to get a lot more and get just sort of like an overall narrative arc. Because I think Iron Man has an overall narrative arc. I think Captain America has an overall narrative arc. Thor, they kind of fucked up a little bit with Thor. He doesn't entirely have an overall narrative arc, but he has a bunch of really awesome shit with him that he goes through, which is awesome. They kind of did Hulk dirty too. I'll throw that out there, but we're not going to get into that.
No, I think that's fair. That's fair.
But then you get to like Avengers Age of Ultron, and her whole story becomes sort of like this love story between her and Hulk. And it's not only happened here, but it's built into other films, right? But then at some point they just decide to go, no, and then they just drop it like a bad joke, like just dropped completely. And like neither characters even reference it, and it's just nothing. Like it never happened.
Wasn't there a cut scene where Natasha and Bruce were supposed to talk about that in Infinity War?
And they're just supposed to be like, yeah, I guess we're just over each other. Which even I think would have been dumb, but they didn't even get that.
No.
You know?
No, not even that.
It really just seems like they're
but
like...
by the way, real quick, that's an example that we use, and it's not just these characters, it's a whole, and not just this storyline, but that's another example of dropped storylines that go nowhere, that clearly weren't part of the quote-unquote plan that Kevin Feige has had. For people who want to like put him up as this deity that can do no wrong and has been intricately weaving the web of like every single film and everything. Bullshit.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things, because the entire second half, really the majority of Black Widow's character arc growth over these films was taken up in a will they won't they with Hulk that was dropped off screen and then never picked up again.
Were you hoping they would? Did you have any investment in them as a couple, honestly, in Age of Ultron?
Don't do it then.
I know, don't do it. They shouldn't have done it. I don't think they should have done that. But do you feel...
Either you commit to it and make it work, or don't do it at all.
But honestly, did you buy it in Age of Ultron?
Don't waste my time then. That's my thing.
I agree, but that's not the question I'm asking. Don't do it then if you're not going to do it right. Don't do it if you're not going to commit to it. You're 100% right. Did you like it, though?
It was fine. I don't think it was great, but you could have made it great with further films down the line. You could have done shit in Infinity War and Endgame or in a Black Widow solo series to make it work.
Right.
Or even something with Hulk, although I understand that is with, rights issues and stuff like that.
Universal will not allow Marvel Studios to make solo Hulk movies. Yeah. The fact that there's going to be a Hulk Disney Plus series is a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah, I get it. So with the Hulk, I can give some leeway.
There are limitations. There are limitations.
There are legal limitations where it's like, fine, okay. But with Black Widow, it's just like you set her up in the beginning, and you're like, ooh, interesting character with Avengers and Captain America, Winter Soldier. And then so much of her story is taken up being like, will they, won't they with the Hulk? And it's like there's no really clear direction for her character. She's just
much of her story in Age of Ultron, or all the movies after
all of the movies afterwards. She's so much of the story is her playing.
But were you really waiting for that to come back?
Hold on.
I'm just asking. It's like, because
it's not whether I want it or not. It's the fact that they spent time doing it. That's my point.
But I'm arguing the fact that I think I'm arguing
that they fucked up her character. So you saying that you don't care is helping my point.
That's not what I'm saying. No. I agree with you that they fucked up her character in the long run. I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you're saying that they spent all of the other movies after Age of Ultron in this like limbo of will they or won't they, at least as far as I recall, when she appeared in Civil War and that moment forward, not a single moment, aside from maybe once, was that addressed. And so it felt as if like they had just dropped it immediately after Age of Ultron.
You remember Ragnarok? A big part of that was what was the reason why he turned back into a human?
Well, the sun's going down.
Because he saw the voice and saw, and it's really pushing forward. There's this connection there between them, and I'm not just solely talking about her scenes. I'm talking about, that's why I said overall story arc. I'm not just talking about specifically scenes with her. I'm talking about everything.
Okay.
There
I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
Yes, there was an overall emphasis on this will they, won't they between them that was barely even developed and then thrown out into the ether. But then they continued to drop hints about it constantly, and it kind of took up her and Hulk's a lot of their character stuff, right? And because when it was solely on them, it was a lot of that, like will they, won't they stuff. yes, there was a lot of scenes where that wasn't what they were about, but most of those scenes was them playing second fiddle to other characters, right?
Right.
Like, there's a great scene in Civil War where she comes to the funeral and talks to Steve Rogers. That's a great scene, right?
Yeah.
But it's really just her playing second fiddle to him. Like, let's be real.
She's always been a supporting player.
Yes, but that's all she is support.
Right.
And I want to understand the human underneath the support.
Mm-hmm.
And they never do it throughout the entire series. So by the time they kill her off in Endgame, it just feels like you're killing her off because you don't know what to do with her. That's what it feels like. We don't know what to do with this character, but she's one of the main ones, so it'll tug at your heartstrings. So here we go. She's dead. And the potential of that character was never realized for me. They fucked around with her.
Yeah.
Until they could kill her off, and then they're like, oh, well, she's gone. She's dead. Anyway, Tony, isn't he a fucking hero? And I guess what hurts is, like, one of the small, like, character things with her that I really wanted them to explore, and you could have explored in her solo movie, is I think it would mean so much to her, right? To be able to see that she imbues a sense of strength and power into little girls around the world.
Kind of like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, but with Wonder Woman, that's kind of just who she is. And with Black Widow, Natasha, that's who she wants to be, right?
Right.
Like, more than anything, she doesn't want to be this monster that she feels like she is.
There was a great line, actually, in the movie about that. A quick, like, I think aside to it, when like Yelena says, like, you're the killer that little girls have posters of in the room, or that they call their hero.
Yeah. But
it's just a line.
It's like one little line. Like something like that, I think would mean a lot to the character to see that, right? And there's a lot of character stuff like that. Like, and I know a lot of people give it a bad rap, and to be fair, it was, looking back, it was done kind of weirdly, about, like, she's like, oh, I can't have kids, I'm a monster. You know, it was Joss Whedon. Yeah, like, he the way it came off was really fucking weird, right? But this idea of, like, she does want to, like, you could tell, like, she does want to be a mom, you know? She does sort of want some stable way of life.
Well, she wants a family, right? She wants a family with kids. And that's kind of what they do. What they try to do in Endgame anyways is like, oh, she lost half her family and she wants to get it back.
Mm-hmm. Kind of. I don't know. I just really feel like the MCU series as a whole, I really like the character. And like I said, there's so many great scenes. There is that great scene again with Steve. She has a lot of great scenes with Steve. Where they're talking
that's why I wanted them. Well, you know,
I wanted them. No. He's with Bucky.
No. She has great scenes with Steve. She has great scenes with Clint. She has some good scenes with Bruce. And that's
another thing too, where it's like, it feels like they don't know what to do with her. So they're like, pair her up with whatever guy she's in the room with at that time. And that really feels a little bit like scummy. Like, we have one female superhero here. We have no idea what to do with her. Let's just do a will they won't they if she'll fuck any guy that's in the room with her at that moment. And I'm not crazy about that.
No. Why would you be? That's just not right.
Yeah.
At all. It's also, far less interesting. No, look, I kind of don't disagree with much of what you said. I think the whole premise of what you're saying is entirely what happened. To be completely clear about it, I feel that Kevin Feige and the Marvel team completely squandered the potential for this character just about every step of the way. She just wasn't utilized the way that she was supposed to. At all. She should have had a series of films. She should have had far more importance placed on her. Maybe I'm one of the fortunate ones where I can walk away and I can say at the very least I enjoyed the few moments of her in the movies that we got. And I can still enjoy some of the things they did while understanding that ultimately maybe there was no greater character they fucked up than with her. Especially from a potentiality. Is that a word, potentiality? Or is that just a made-up word? Or the potential of, the greatness that she could have been. Yeah, I mean, honestly, she's the first, main female hero in the MCU, but she's the second one to get her movie. She's, behind Captain Marvel. She was the first one that got it. It's just so many ways. There was even, I think, did you read it? I sent it over this morning on the group chat. The Daily Beast. Marvel's Black Widow movie is one last fuck you to Natasha Romanoff.
Holy shit.
That's the review. Yeah, that's the headline of the review.
See, I wouldn't even put it that way.
I mean, I would though. As far as the film is concerned, they kept saying, "Oh, we're finally going to tell her story," and then they don't make the movie about her.
Not really.
And they don't showcase anything new. They don't showcase really, as I said, when I think about my favorite scenes of her in the MCU, they're none from here.
None of them are from here. Yeah. There are good scenes in this film, but all of them I think of where I'm they're not with her. Her character isn't the reason why they're good.
No.
But you know what? I think that's also why her dying just pisses me off so much more. Because you look at now, right? You have characters that have always, in a similar way to Natasha, have been sidelined, but also they weren't founding Avengers members. So that's kind of also understandable. But with Wanda, right?
Yeah.
So it's for sure she was always sidelined in the past, but she was always a side character. But because she got to live through the shenanigans of Endgame, we got WandaVision. And it's yes, this is great. Now you have the time to explore this character. Same with Sam. Sam was also, if they had killed off Sam in Endgame, I'd be kind of pissed. He's just nothing, right? But because they allowed him to live, it's oh, okay, awesome. We got Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Falcon and the quote unquote. And it's awesome. It's wow, I like this character. I like it so much. If they had allowed her to live like Thor, like Hulk, I feel we could have gotten a very, very different Black Widow film.
Yeah.
That would have been the beginning of her exploration, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. No, what?
Really push forward.
No, that's a really good point. Then it's also unfortunate as well. In the weeks leading up to the film's release, Kevin Feige, Kate Shortland, other people involved in the movie, they've been asked questions about, could there be more Black Widow movies? Could there be more Black Widow projects? I think obviously we're going to be seeing a lot more of Yelena. I think people are thinking about Thunderbolts or whatever. We'll get to that in a minute.
I think she's going to be in Dark Avengers.
Do you think they'll ever do, let's say Yelena or whatever. They're doing a Black Widow Disney Plus series with her as the lead. Is that a possibility?
The White Widow.
Because they also asked, or I think Kevin Feige was the one that actually answered with, there's still more room to do more Black Widow stories, particularly as prequels. Which I don't know why you would say that. He wasn't asked about that. He, of his own volition, mentioned that. As far as anyone's concerned, is this the last time we're going to see Scarlett Johansson?
I think so.
Because I feel that way. I feel that she's done and she's ready to move on. She's been with us for 10 years now, for better or for worse. So there's no reason to expect her to come back to do a Black Widow Disney Plus series, right?
No. I think she has even said, this is the last time she will
Would
play
you be
Natasha.
opposed to getting a Black Widow Disney Plus series with her as the lead and it being a prequel or whatever? If that ever were to happen.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any story to tell at this point.
We're done at this point.
Like,
it's
prequel-wise, yeah.
Mm.
I just don't see there being anything interesting to say with her character in a prequel. Again, I think there would have been.
What about the 5
forward.
years in between Infinity War and Endgame? You think there'd be something there?
Honestly, no.
I wouldn't either, but you can't blame somebody for hoping. But don't, ultimately. It is what it is.
Yelena's their new Black Widow.
Yeah. Which is why the movie was made, it seems like.
But again, it's kind of a funny situation though, because it's like, I do really like her. I do really want to see her in more stuff. Yelena. So it's like, it's kind of like, fuck you, Marvel, but at the same time, you're not entirely wrong. I don't know.
No, I can still say fuck you, Marvel.
Okay.
And I don't care if you're not entirely wrong. I'm pissed. I, for one, am upset at this. Yeah. For my personal reasons, I have no reason to ever watch this movie again. I have no reason to ever think about this movie again. But I will say, and some have noted on Twitter, particularly female critics have responded much stronger to the movie. And again, if it works for you, good for you.
Yeah.
Please.
100%.
Please.
And I don't hate the movie. I cannot deny.
I don't hate the movie either.
I had a very good time.
I just hate the overall picture when it comes to how that character was handled.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really coloring the frustration and the anger that you're hearing off me. But again, as I've said, it's not a bad movie. The MCU has made worse material. Trust me.
I would recommend go watch it in the theaters. Have fun.
Yeah,
it's a really fun time.
Offhand, what Marvel projects do you think are worse than this?
Worse. The obvious Thor 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Let me pull up
your list, man.
My MCU list.
You didn't delete it off Letterboxd? You deleted Pixar, but you didn't delete the MCU list.
I don't think I did. Fuck, did I? No, I didn't. Okay. You know what? I'll say it. I think it's better than Captain Marvel.
I think so too.
I would watch it over Captain Marvel. I would.
Mm-hmm.
It was more enjoyable. Easily better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know if it's better, but I did enjoy it more than Black Panther.
Wow.
But we have very different opinions than Black Panther than most people.
Well, you and I agree for the most part, but just to clarify, but as far as everybody else is concerned, that film is
very
beloved.
different. Yeah. I don't know about Doctor Strange is a weird one for me.
Yeah, I never think about that movie.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the only one that thinks it's kind of weirdly edited. I don't know. Ant-Man. I liked the first Ant-Man.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah. I don't know. It's at least not in the bottom. Black Widow is at least not in the bottom 4.
It seems very middle of the road, MCU.
Yeah. But like, I'm seeing like my top 5. No. Like, Spider-Man Homecoming is like number 12 for me, right? Mm-hmm. So like, it's definitely, I don't think, better than Spider-Man Homecoming.
No.
So, I like Avengers Age of Ultron more. I have more fun with it. I strangely like that one a lot.
I like it too.
Yeah. And I'm also someone that does have a soft spot for Iron Man too.
I like it as well. I would probably watch Iron Man 2. I wouldn't watch Black Widow again. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I wouldn't watch it again anytime soon. But if I'm doing a rewatch, I guess I might as well.
I mean, if you're going to rewatch Thor: The Dark World and Captain Marvel and...
Yeah, at that point, you might as well put that one on.
You have to.
Only in this case, you would want to put that in chronological order.
Yeah. It's not bad. I could easily throw it up and watch it, but it's not something I'm going to clamor to see again, right?
No.
Like, there's a lot of films that... Comic book films, right? I think when I saw Thor Ragnarok, I'm like, I need to see that again.
Absolutely.
Right? And this one, it's just like...
I don't need to.
I'll see it again when I see it again. So, yeah. But it is not bad. It is good. Go have fun. Yeah.
Did you also find it ending on a weird note? Not the post-credits scene, but the movie. The film ends with like them leaving Natasha there to be arrested, and then like it skips 2 weeks, and then she's like in her platinum hair that we see in Infinity War. Okay. And then she leaves.
I was gonna ask you this because they're like, we'll stay with you, we'll fight. And then she's like, no, I've handled them before, I can take it. But it's like dozens of cars. Dozens. With probably like 3 times as many agents as cars running up on her. And like, there's nowhere to run. There's like a wide plain, like flat land, nowhere to hide. There's no buildings.
Bunch of debris around her.
Yeah, and like she's all injured, like she can't get that far. And then they're just like, the cars literally seem like they're gonna be on her ass in like T-minus 2 seconds. And she's just standing there, and then they cut, and they're like, I guess she got away.
But she very easily could have gotten away on the fucking jet.
Why did she get in the jet?
What was the point of her staying there?
I don't know. Like, were they planning to do like an action scene? I don't know. I don't know what it was. It's weird. I think they just want to make sure that you know that they went their separate ways, right?
Yeah.
But then why include what's his name? The like cars on them? I don't know. It's just silly. It's just dumb because it's like her ass should have been arrested.
Unless she was, the implication is that she was, and then she just got away because she's Natasha.
Maybe, yeah.
That's like she was caught and then she just escaped.
But that could have been like a fun little action scene to like leave the movie on.
Sure.
Like watching her escape, you know, like undoing the cuffs, sneaking out, like doing different wigs. Yeah, I don't know. That could have been fun. Instead of just like, got you a jet, bye. Okay, bye. I don't know. But we didn't even really talk about this much, but like, this film should not have come out. I guess we did talk about it, but it shouldn't have come out right now. Even, like, and I'm not talking about like the pandemic, but literally nothing about the film says like this story needed to be told now. Like, it's very clearly, if you were going to make this exact film, it should have came out after Civil War.
Immediately after Civil War.
Yeah. In fact, I would recommend to everyone on rewatches to just stick it right there after Civil War. Maybe watch it after Ragnarok. I don't know. But like,
Ragnarok is right before Infinity War, so I wouldn't put it that close to it. But like,
that's true.
I would probably think that if you'd watch this movie, obviously in the chronological order rather than release order, you might enjoy Natasha more in the last 2 Avenger films.
Yeah. There might be a little bit more meat in those bones.
Because she at least had a movie. And
there's at least a story, a solo story with her there, you know,
right,
before she died. Like, there's no reason why this should exist. This story needed. That's why I call bullshit on Kevin Feige going like, there's prequel stories to tell. This wasn't even a story you needed to tell.
No.
There's no reason why it had to be told right now like this.
I mean, in the plot, it was like, because they had to take down the Red Room, and Nat's like, wait, I did. Because they had established that a few movies ago. Like, she took down the Red Room. So, like, they undid something and then just did the exact same thing at the end of the film.
Yeah. Well. I don't know. And how did they not know? Okay, this is like dumb comic book shit, but I do think it's funny. How did they not know the black like Shield and stuff? The Black Widows were not still running around, especially.
How did Shield not know?
Yeah, because the Black Widows that are still running around are still wearing their very prominent Black Widow uniforms with Black Widow logos on them.
Yeah,
like. That had to have come up at some point where they're like, look, here's a photo of an assailant leaving the assassination wearing the Black fucking Widow uniform.
I guess, like, as soon as they felt that, because they say that Natasha helped kill Dreykov, and they just assumed the pieces fell together and there was no reason to ever check again. And I guess, coincidentally, they never
It just never came
them.
up? They never encountered them at all? Highly unlikely. But okay. Yeah. Especially for like S.H.I.E.L.D. and other agencies. Especially because S.H.I.E.L.D. was the one that was all over the Red Room's ass, apparently. Right? Because they're the ones that really took them down.
Right.
I don't know.
I guess if you could say Hydra excused it. I don't know.
What's the MCU film after this one? Shang-Chi, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking forward to Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
See.
We don't have similar concerns about that movie, though, in terms of like making the main character the least interesting part of their ensemble, because they did that. Speaking of Black Panther and speaking of Captain Marvel, they have this thing where like they give their main character the straight role, and then everyone around them is allowed to be far more interesting. I just don't understand that.
So weird to me, because in the shows. The main characters are just so much the most interesting thing going on, right?
Yep.
Like so much that. And then the films, I know it's different. One's 6 to 9 hours, another one's 2.5 hours at most. So I understand it's different time constraints. But yeah. But at the very least, even if Shang-Chi's not all that great, like it's cool new world to dive into, so let's see how the action. That's what I'm really interested. The action has looked good so far in the trailers, but it hasn't been much.
So we're about to hit 2.5 hours.
Yes.
Do you want to break now and like save the review for next time, or do you want to go ahead and get into Fear Street Part 1?
Tell you what, we can break now, and we can just do a trilogy review.
I think I'd love that idea.
Yeah, we can do that.
Just to save us the needless, or save us the time of going another half hour, because we really don't want to make this 3 hours long.
No.
I think we're good for now. Anyway, I think that's a great discussion. I feel like I honestly have not heard anywhere on the internet a much more like comprehensive like breakdown as to how this character was handled in the MCU. So I feel proud of us for at least doing that. And I also feel proud of us for not yelling at each other for a change over the disagreements that we've had overall. But it seems like, I mean, like I said, we basically arrive at the exact same place, even though there's like disagreements on little things here and there.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. Next time, since we didn't review Fear Street here, we're going to do a trilogy. We're going to review the trilogy of Fear Street 1994, Fear Street 1978, and then part 3, which is what,
1666. Got those 3 sixes in there. I feel that's why they did it.
1666. So yeah. And then eventually other shows.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Thank you all for listening. Stay under the spotlight, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.